At a racetrack in Portugal, a Chinese rider on a Zhang Xue motorcycle crossed the finish line first. Twice, by the time that news spread, more than 5,000 overseas dealers had lined up asking to represent the Zhang Xue Motorcycle brand. That's the headline. But the real story starts much earlier, and it goes a lot deeper. Because not long ago, Chinese motorcycles were in a completely different position on the world stage. They weren't being fought over. They were being written off. The phrase "made in China" on a motorcycle used to mean one thing to most international buyers: cheap, disposable, and not worth much more than what you paid for it. There were markets where Chinese bikes were essentially priced by volume, not by quality, not by brand, but by sheer quantity moved at the lowest possible margin. So what changed, and how did it change so completely? I went to find out in a city in southern China called Jiangmen, in Guangdong province. Here is a number that puts Jiangmen in context. Of every 5 motorcycles exported from China, 1 carries a Jiangmen label. The Zhang Xue Motorcycle Championship winning bike itself, the helmet, the exhaust pipe, ceramic cylinder at the heart of the engine. All of it came from Jiangmen, in one district of the city, across roughly 80 square kilometers. There are over 1,000 companies making motorcycles and motorcycle components. If you need any single part, you can source it within half an hour without leaving the area. Supply chain density is so tight that you could theoretically assemble an entire motorcycle without stepping outside the township. That kind of industrial clustering is almost impossible to replicate. And it's one of the structural advantages that most people looking at Chinese manufacturing from the outside simply don't see. Walking into the production floor of one of Jiangmen's major motorcycle manufacturers, the first thing you notice is that it doesn't look like the factory you might have imagined. High-precision torque control systems on the engine assembly line, every single bolt tightened to an exact specification. Fully automated post-production engine testing, where each unit is run through real operating conditions before it leaves the floor. Automated guided vehicles coordinating the assembly sequence so that human error at the handoff points is essentially eliminated. This isn't a showroom floor. This is daily production at scale. The executives I spoke with kept coming back to 2 phrases: user needs and quality. Those words might sound generic, but in the context of where this industry has been, they represent a genuine shift in thinking. Chinese motorcycles had a long and painful run through the price war era. At their peak, they held strong market positions across Southeast Asia. Then competition intensified, margins got squeezed, quality drifted, and the industry found itself in a race to the bottom that ultimately hollowed out the very thing that makes a brand worth anything. Contract manufacturing, private label work, internal undercutting, all of it happening at the same time, leaving a reputation problem that took years to accumulate and is taking years to undo. Companies in Jiangmen are doing the undoing in a very deliberate way. One manufacturer is developing high displacement, low fuel consumption models specifically calibrated for different regional markets. Not a one-size-fits-all approach, but genuine product localization based on how people actually use motorcycles in different parts of the world. Another company has spent years working through the technical challenges of titanium alloy forming and welding. Difficult, slow, expensive work that most competitors have avoided precisely because it's so hard. Once you solve it, though, it becomes a competitive moat that's very difficult to cross. A third is going deep into carbon fiber technology for helmets. A materials science challenge that puts you in a completely different competitive tier once you get there. The common thread across all of these is the same. Compete on technology, not on price. The brand building approach has shifted too. International motorsport sponsorships, motorcycle club partnerships, organic community building on global social platforms. These aren't one-time marketing campaigns. They're long-term investments in building the kind of brand recognition that turns a first-time buyer into a repeat customer, and a repeat customer into someone who actively advocates for the brand. Zhang Xue Motorcycle's championship wins fit into this context perfectly. They didn't come out of nowhere. They landed in a market where the manufacturing capability, the product quality, and the early brand work had already been quietly accumulating. When the results came in from the racetrack in Portugal, overseas buyers had something concrete to point to. The performance was real. The bike was real. And suddenly, 5,000 people wanted to be part of it, not as customers, but as business partners wanting to carry the Zhang Xue Motorcycle name in their own markets. The motorcycle industry had been written off in some quarters as a legacy sector. Low growth ceiling, overcapacity, thin margins, nothing exciting happening. What I saw in Jiangmen didn't match that description at all. Clean, well-organized production floors. Workers who knew their processes in precise detail. Companies making sustained investments in both technology and brand over timelines that don't pay off in 1 quarter or even 1 year. Here is a word I keep coming back to when I think about what I observed. Intentional. The shift happening in Chinese motorcycle manufacturing isn't accidental. It isn't just the result of market forces pushing companies in a new direction. It's the product of deliberate decisions made by people who looked at where the industry had ended up and decided they weren't going to stay there. The global market is reflecting this. Consumer attitudes toward Chinese motorcycle brands have been moving through distinct phases, from "it's cheap and it'll do," to "actually, I like this brand," to now, in some markets, people actively seeking out the latest models. That progression doesn't happen because of a single marketing moment. It happens because the product earned it, and the ownership experience backed it up. Zhang Xue Motorcycle's championship wins gave the world a window to look through. What they saw on the other side was an industry that had already done the hard work of rebuilding itself from the inside. A brand that didn't wait for the world to take it seriously. It went to one of motorsport's most competitive international stages and proved it deserved to be there. The rider who crossed that finish line first, that moment mattered. But the people who made it possible are the ones in the workshops, the ones solving materials problems that have no shortcut, and the ones who decided somewhere along the way that being the cheapest option was never going to be enough. That's the real story behind the Zhang Xue Motorcycle rise. And if 5,000 dealers lining up is just the beginning, the rest of the world is about to pay a lot more attention.